with you today and to talk about something that I find extremely important that has not just a local and a state nexus, but also a federal one, and that's infrastructure. And a lot of times when we think infrastructure, we think roads and bridges and waterways and airports and transmission lines. But we all know in this room, if you're from a Western state especially, the importance of broadband, the importance of being connected and what that means. When we look at the federal input into that, some things that I know Cynthia and I are both really focused on as members of the Commerce Committee is making sure that on these federal programs, we don't see a lot of duplication, and that we need to see programs that work, programs that are able to get that connectivity out there in areas like Yellowstone National Park, in the Grand Tetons, in the Sandhills of Nebraska, where I live. And so we have to figure out how to do that and how to make sure that taxpayer money is being spent in a responsible way and in a way that is going to make sure we get that all connected. Some of the things that we have issues with when we consider that at the federal level is how do we make the permitting process more streamlined. And we've heard about that in our previous panels as well. But that also applies to broadband permitting applications and being able to get those through. We also have to understand that there are many ways that we can connect people through technology, whether it's with hard lines, whether it's with satellites, whether it's wireless. We need to figure out which ways work in what areas of the country in order for that technology to be a viable option that people can use. We have a lot of things we're looking at. Cynthia talked about rip and replace. That's definitely a concern for Nebraska, it's for Wyoming, it's for Colorado. This is to get the technology that some of our companies put in, the Chinese technology, whether it was Huawei or ZTE, and be able to get that out. And we were able, through Cynthia's leadership on the Commerce Committee just this last week, to get that in a markup, and hopefully we'll get it to the floor. Last point. Rural America is important. And rural America is here in Jackson Hole, it's in Wyoming, it's in the Sandhills of Nebraska, it's in every small community. Don't forget about agriculture when you talk about rural Nebraska, when you talk about rural America, and the importance of that, and the importance of being able to have that connectivity with all the really cool technology that's out there. Precision ag is a way that we can continue to attract young people back to rural America. And so we have a bill, it's called the Last Acre Act, to be able to map out where we have connectivity in this country and where we need it. And that will help with, in any number of ways, but also to make sure that agriculture, young people in agriculture, established people in agriculture are able to use the technology that's available to be more profitable with less inputs. Cynthia told me I can't go on and on forever and ever. And so with that, I'm going to turn it back to her so we can hear from this fabulous panel. And we have some great questions for you.
Well, thank you. I'm going to break with going down the line and start with FirstNet. Jack Cobb is here from FirstNet Authority, and there's so many questions about FirstNet that we'd like to start with you. So please welcome Jack Cobb. Do you have a microphone?
No. Thank you. Thank you very much for inviting us to be here. FirstNet is a really great partnership that has provided a lot of resources to rural and agricultural communities across the country, but particularly the West. We were created out of advice from the 9/11 Commission that the country needed a single nationwide broadband network for first responders. On 9/11, they realized that not only could the New York Fire Department not talk to the New York Police Department, but then when you had hundreds of different jurisdictions send in support, nobody could talk to anybody. And so it was a very serious challenge. And in 2012, Congress created FirstNet. The sort of three most important things they did to get us started were they gave us our own spectrum. If you're not familiar with spectrum, it is like radio channels. So we have our own spectrum, which means that we're on like 99.5 FM, so we're not competing with commercial networks, which means first responders don't have to compete against people on TikTok, streaming, FaceTime, anything. They have their own dedicated spectrum just for them. Congress also used the proceeds of a spectrum auction to give us $8 billion to do the initial network build-out for the first 5 years of the network build. And they gave us an independent board of experts to be our leadership. So we are not led by political appointees. We have a board of 12 experts from industry, public safety, and local governments to help provide leadership and guide our direction. Our first steps, once we got going, was to engage in state consultation, working with local governments, tribes, and states to figure out what do they actually need from a network. We do not want DC to decide that Wyoming needs ABC. Instead, we went to Wyoming, met with local tribes, states, and then got those feedback into a contract. We had a competitive contracting process. AT&T won the contract. And then they went to the states and began negotiating what would that initial network look like. And so the governors had to choose to opt into the program. If they didn't opt into the program, they would get the rights to the spectrum in their own state. So Wyoming could have built their own Wyoming cell phone network, but instead they opted into FirstNet. As part of that, they got some of that $8 billion to build cell phone towers where the governor negotiated they needed them. Also based on the feedback from state, from local and tribal officials. So that was in 2017, we got the contract going, we got all 56 states and territories to opt in. After that, we began building out. That finished in 2023. So that was sort of the initial network full capability. Just since in those couple of years, we've now over 6.1 million connections across the country in all 56 states and territories at over 28,000 public safety agencies. So everyone from the Northern Mariana Islands to Alaska, Florida, and U.S. Virgin Islands is using it. I mentioned that Congress gave us that initial start of money in spectrum. The other thing they told us to do was to be financially sustainable. So we received no ongoing appropriations from Congress. We leased the spectrum to AT&T, and they pay us for the privilege of using that spectrum. And then we take those funds and we reinvest it back into the network. What that means is that over the last couple of years, we've been able to significantly expand the fleet of deployables. So similar to those devices you see over there, up to large satellite trucks, and even a blimp that was working for a while to help provide coverage to like a hurricane disaster. Our financial sustainability also means we have been completely budget neutral. We started from a spectrum auction, and we continue to work off of the fees that we receive from AT&T, so we have never cost the taxpayers a direct dime out of annual appropriations. Our investments are really about to start growing as the network is continuing to expand. In February, we announced a 10-year, $8 billion plan to invest in the network. The vast majority of that money will go to upgrade the full Band 14 nationwide in all 56 states and territories to 5G. So this means that every first responder who is on FirstNet will have 5G service everywhere we are. There will also be over $2 billion for coverage enhancements. So this could be improving the quality of coverage where it's good but not great, and also in many rural tribal communities, investing in new coverages never existed before. Our mandate is to provide coverage where public safety needs it, not where a large population center or a customer base exists. So this is funds that exist solely to build coverage on broadband capacity where it serves public safety interest, no shareholder interest, business interest, just the public interest. So that's sort of the major things we're working on right now. As we look at that 10-year investment plan, we do face a hurdle that our 2012 Act includes a sunset clause in February of 2027. So while we have our sort of plan to invest over the 10 years, in about 2.5 years without any action, we will shut down. So that is also something we're very happy to be here and meet with you all about. But also we would love to engage with you all in your constituents to learn where they need coverage, what they want. We really take stakeholder feedback, first responder feedback as a critical part of deciding how investment money is spent in communities.
Thank you. As Jack mentioned, their private sector partner is AT&T. And Laura Kirkham is here with AT&T. Thanks, Laura. We're going to move to you. And then we'll get to hear from the Teton County Sheriff and Search and Rescue about the boots on the ground part of this important rural communications work. Thanks, Laura.
Thank you, Senator Lummis, Senator Fischer, so happy to be here. As a former congressional staffer, I think what's so important is when you come on these trips to be able to understand the policy. It's one thing to understand the policy when you're in DC and you're meeting with constituents there, but it's certainly another thing to come boots on the ground, literally here, and really get into the nitty-gritty of what your policy means and how it affects your constituents. And you can only look outside here and as you traverse this wonderful town and state, and understand that as the big skies are here and the wonderful expanses of why our constituents want to live here and continue to live and work here, you can understand some challenges that we face when it comes to build out. And so for AT&T, our perspective is to really look at, as we talked about in the energy world, all of the above, as we mentioned before. So we do look at wireless connectivity, fiber connectivity, satellite connectivity that we're looking to deploy. We've got some testing and some developments on that front, which are exciting for us. But it's also why our relationship with FirstNet is so important too. Because as Jack mentioned, when you look at when we were discussing these state plans and when we were looking at the RFP and deciding whether or not we wanted to be a part of this amazing endeavor, it was where is our current network? What holes needed to be filled by for public safety to help them in certain areas, and how could we use the AT&T network as it was 6 years ago and how we could grow it to where it is now. And so that's been so important to us. That build has resulted in 1,000 new purpose-built FirstNet towers launching in areas identified as for public safety coverage, and what were the priority for public safety. Here in Wyoming, communities across the state, including Teton County, which we'll discuss later, we've launched more than a dozen new purpose-built FirstNet tower sites in 6 counties, including coverage in areas identified as priorities. We've added Band 14 spectrum, as Jack mentioned, to over 300 sites across the state, including another 150 sites in collaboration with Union Telephone, which is, as we talked about, when you talk about the replace, it affects the small guys as we've discussed.
Absolutely.
And we're excited for you guys tomorrow to come to Jenny Lake and look at that and what we've built, and with great relationship with Grand Teton National Park. And you can see on the side, we're going to see that in person tomorrow. So happy to introduce that to you. It's also heartening when we hear from the front lines on how these investments really make a difference. As a severe tornado outbreak occurred across Nebraska earlier this year, 24 tornado tracks were reported damaging thousands of homes and businesses. Nebraska Chief Deputy Sheriff William Rand of Douglas County shared that FirstNet was the only thing that worked out here. So we're happy to also talk about that first responders in Nebraska. In more than 110 communities are using FirstNet. We've added Band 14 to 550 sites across the state in collaboration with Bureau Wireless, which is another endeavor for us that we're happy with. I will stop there to give everyone else an opportunity to move on, so we can talk to the real guys here that are using our services. So happy to do that.
Laura, thank you. And it's an impressive network that has been developed. Now let's hear from the front lines, the people who use the network and respond to the real life issues that require rural connectivity. I'd like to introduce Sheriff Matt Carr and the head of Teton County Search and Rescue, Cody Lockhart.
Thank you, Senator, and welcome to you all. Welcome to Teton County. I was excited to hear during the last break that you're going to get out and explore some of the valley, which is really exciting to see what we have to offer to the rest of the world. One of the things that we work with so closely as a Teton County Sheriff by state statute, I'm responsible for search and rescue. And search and rescue is something that is a critical part of what we do here in Wyoming and Teton County, is while folks are going out and enjoying the wonderful beauty and nature of the area, they oftentimes need help, and that struggle to connect with the help that they need and get the first responders to the area is a critical piece of what AT&T and FirstNet have been able to provide to help us operate in the area. When we're talking about rural areas, Teton County is a great example of that. We've got so many amazing public lands around us to enjoy. I'm very excited you all are going to enjoy Jenny Lake and Grand Teton National Park tomorrow. But just envision the challenges that are presented to rescuers in situations like that, where we have to go into those areas and help people on their worst days. And that's what we do, and we have a great group of people. I'm going to turn it over now to Cody Lockhart to talk about, in rural communities, often we rely on volunteers who leave their jobs, leave their families, to walk out on somebody's worst day and help them out as best they can, and how critical it is that we have that connectivity so we can get the resources to an area that we need to get and do the job that we need to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff. Howdy, everybody. I'm a volunteer. I have a day job, but my hobby is I get to be a part of search and rescue here in Teton County. There's 36 volunteers that have taken on this task of providing backcountry service in Teton County. We're not unique. You know, all 23 counties in Wyoming have a volunteer team working under a sheriff that provides that service. And my understanding is most states in the West have a similar situation. Here in Teton County last year, we had 132 rescues. So almost every other day, someone called us on their worst day and we had to go help them out. Just tell you a quick story about this week, or tell you what's going on right now. Our helicopter, our crew is like on a rescue up in the park right this minute. We had another rescue up in the park with our helicopter yesterday to get a sick hiker. On Tuesday, we had a couple rescues, and one's maybe just a good illustration of kind of what happens and how we use connectivity and what happens. So 1:30 in the afternoon on Tuesday, our 911 dispatcher gets a call from a hysterical mother. Her daughter had just fallen off a four-wheeler. She was unconscious. It was a very ugly scene. Immediately, our dispatch sends out a text message to our search and rescue leadership team, so it comes through our FirstNet coverage. We jump on a phone call, figure out what to do. Within 18 minutes, we had volunteers that had left their families, their day jobs, jumping in a helicopter to fly up to work on saving this young lady's life. You know, you kind of play that forward another hour. We had our search and rescue with ER doctors that are on our team short-hauled into this patient, so she was in a very remote location. We have to swing them on a line underneath the helicopter to get to where they are because we can't land there. We call another helicopter from Idaho because this gal had severe head trauma, and we knew that we needed to get her out of this valley to a higher level of care. Right after we swung the doctor in on the line, a huge thunderstorm came over. All the helicopters got grounded because we can't fly in the lightning to go up there. And just to paint the picture on the scene a little bit, you have a mother, a 17-year-old daughter, a 16-year-old daughter that's unconscious, fighting for her life, a thunderstorm blasting everybody, and a complete rodeo, I guess would be how you describe the situation. We ended up having to get a razor, which is a four-wheeler where we can put someone in there, beat her down a dirt road a little bit until the weather cleared. We landed our helicopter, put her in it, flew her to a landing zone at a dude ranch, switched her to a life flight helicopter after our doctors worked on her and tried to stabilize her, and flew her to Idaho Falls. That all happened within 2 hours and was done by 36 volunteers that left their families like that. And so just try to draw the picture of this goes from daily life to spun up really quick, really fast. A lot of agencies were involved with a thing like this. And so the most important tool we use, or the tool we use on every rescue we have, is our cell phones. It's how we track our people. It's how we use our maps. It's how we communicate with each other. And in my short tenure on search and rescue, we've gone from a scenario where how you got a hold of us is you walked down the trail, you found a landline, you called 911, and we had to go figure out where you were in the world. Like, we had to search for you. Searching doesn't exist in our world anymore. We know where everybody is. Like, if you have a cell phone, we can find you, and we know where you are if we have coverage. So I guess want to tell you that story of what we have going on here, give you a little local flavor for what happens here in our Jackson backcountry. You know, our business in Jackson Hole is selling tourism. So 4-wheeler rides, you know, climbing the Grand Teton, float in the river, wrestle with grizzly bears. Those are all, you know, that's our business here. And if we're going to provide a high level of service to those that are in trouble, having their worst day of their life, you know, we have to be able to communicate. It's the thing that happens 100% of the time on a rescue. And it's pretty amazing what has happened in my short tenure in the rescue world. From rolling out a topo and trying to figure out where someone might be, to like knowing exactly where they are, to be pinging their phone and having very good comms throughout, you know, the area. And just maybe one more highlight on Teton County. We have, it's called the Thoroughfare. If you just go straight north of town, it's the most remote place in North America, or 48 at least. You know, there's 48 miles between you and the nearest road. And so that's the area that we're responsible for. We're part of it. And just drawing a picture of how important communications are. Every time it's paramount.
Thanks, Cody. I have to ask, are you Kelly Buckhart's son?
Yes.
Oh my gosh, so when I was a little kid in 4-H, I showed livestock at the Wyoming State Fair with your father, who I just adore. And isn't that a classic Wyoming story? We're all knit together. What I love about this panel is that we've gone from the network level to the private sector network provider level to the local level to the people who actually are out there utilizing rural connectivity to save lives. And we've seen it just in the last few minutes, how this all works. And it's so great when you see an example of something that can work so well to save people's lives. I think most of us from Wyoming know people whose lives have been lost, either to avalanches because they were extreme skiing or climbing. It's a place where there's a lot of extreme sports and people who engage in extreme sports. And when there is a injury, it can be an extreme injury. So, Cody, thank you for saving lives and doing it. I know what your day job is. So it's really nice to meet you, and I want to thank you for your volunteerism, Sheriff and Laura. And thank you all. Now I'm going to turn it over to Deb Fischer to ask some questions, and if any of you have questions, raise your hands now, and we're going to try to have a hard stop in 5 minutes. So it's going to be lightning round.
Cody, as you were going through that, I'm thinking about how are you connected to everybody? You know, what does AT&T, what does FirstNet do? You know, you have wire lines that are costly, especially when you have to run them for miles and miles and miles and miles, and it's just, it makes no sense in certain areas. Are there ways you're looking at leveraging satellite internet, the technologies that are available there so that you can have that broadband access in certain areas, or do you know examples of other communities that have done that?
I'm the country bumpkin here, like I don't understand all the things they were saying about spectrums and all that. But I will say that I understand like when my phone works or when it doesn't. I understand that satellite technology is real now. We get a lot of our patients that, you know, have an Apple device. They don't have cell phone service. They can text with us. You know, right now when we send a rescuer out in the field, they have 3 or 4 modes of communication. They have their cell phone, which we're using that like just like everybody always uses their phones. We have radios. Here in Wyoming, we have a very cool system called WyoLink that the sheriff's been a part of that is integrated with this FirstNet thing, and we won't get into the details of that. They have a radio. We have a government satellite thing that we pair with our phone so you can text without service somewhere. And we do have now our newer phones that we can text directly with dispatch, which is something I've done. Like I get in a pickle and I can like text dispatch and say, here's what's going on. The next step of this, or what would be huge for us, is if the satellite communication can get to the next level where we have satellite comms on our existing phones everywhere in the county. And it sounds
So
like
you
that's...
still have a checkerboard effect where there are areas that you just, it's blackout. You can't.
Yeah, I'd say 90% of the county, I'm making this number up, but a huge part of the county does not have service. And so when we go out there to do our job, like for example, I can track everybody on their, when they're in the field, they're tracking on their phone, I can watch them. It looks like ants. You kind of see them crawling through the mountains doing their job. As soon as they lose service, I can't follow them anymore. And so, there's definitely a gap there. We all know the technology with satellites and keeping track of everybody existed, but we haven't got it all the way integrated where it's functioning at what we know it could.
So first of all, Cody, you're hired if you want a second career as a lobbyist, because I think you're doing a great job explaining everything too. And the on-the-ground story is just, it's moving and just wonderful. And thank you for being here. For AT&T, we have a collaboration with AST Space Mobile, which will be the next step in this patchwork that we're working on. And we're developing, we're testing, we've made some key milestones with this development to fill in those gaps. But as you mentioned, there are some places that we talked about, topography, distance from a central office. I mean, these are things in this area that we talk about how beautiful it is, but it does make it difficult. So we are looking at the all of the above approach as we talk. It's one thing to lay fiber in a local community. It's another thing to be able to put towers around Jenny Lake, but certainly in the backcountry, that is sort of the last step that we need to get, and that's where the satellite movement is hopefully going, and we'll keep you apprised, obviously, of next steps there. But we're pretty pleased with the progress so far.
Great. Any concluding remarks from our panelists? Anything you wish you'd been able to say that you haven't yet? What a great panel. Thank you so much for your expertise. Well, it's been a great morning. I'm going to hand the microphone to the Vice Chair of the House Western Caucus, my dear friend, Adrian Smith.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you to the entire panel, and again, for all the participation here. I can't help but think how, when it comes to communication and the vast spaces across America's a big country, right? That really it's private sector innovation that has been driving it with public sector involvement and applicators, if you will, to really make the world a better place and to save lives. And so that's what we should be in this business for, and I'm grateful to be a part of it. So we're going to break for lunch now. I'm just standing in for our chairman, Dan Newhouse, but we're going to break for lunch, and I understand that there will be a high-profile special guest at lunch, so stay tuned. Glad you're here.
Sorry,